Hi, my name is Karlee Busher, and I'm here today to inform you over a topic that I find not only interesting, but one that I believe every U.S. citizen should have the basic knowledge of, and that is the settlement of the West. Don't get me wrong, I do believe that other eras in our nation's history, such as the colonization of the eastern side of the United States, are important, impactful, and interesting as well. But I chose to research the Wild West because of how it relates to me and my family as well. From the time period of about 1860 to 1900, during the settlement of the Western American frontier, many foundational events that led to the Industrial Revolution occurred, and the effect of the new idea of convenience left people with the idea that the United States and the reality of life would never be the same. It mainly started when the Civil War ended, after the construction of the Iron Horse was completed in 1869. Before the railroad, there was only two ways to move across the country, either by an oxen-drawn wagon or by horse alone. The new way of transportation in this region of the country introduced a much quicker way of travel and led to a variety of different groups of people moving west. Whether it was the white man rushing across the state lines in seek of a new job, or the freed African-American slaves who had the desire to seek prosperity. Chinese railroad workers were also contributors to the diversity that is still found in the area today. Communication was also a key factor in the development of the West. Mail that once took months to be received was then delivered by service riders within about 10 days because of the system called the Pony Express. However, the recent invention of the telegraph ended the Pony Express era, while also making the time period more technologically mature. Farming advancements also stimulated westward expansion as new methods, like dry farming, and they showed to thrive on the plains of the West. With the vast amount of farmers, there was a need for seed, equipment, household goods, clothing, animal feed, and credit. Small towns began popping up across the western landscape to serve the growing population. Toward the end of the 1800s, the West had become home to many farms, ranches, towns, and vast open spaces. But the truth is that these vast open spaces weren't necessarily theirs to take. By moving west, the white settlers were also taking land away from the Native Americans. Huge herds of bison were almost completely wiped out, which drastically affected the lives of the Indian tribes, as it was their main source for food and other materials that they were constantly using in their daily lives. The conflicts that followed these actions almost always ended with the U.S. military handing the Native Americans defeat. And the truth of the matter is that like the buffalo, a majority of the Indians were killed during the process of the settling of the West. By the end of the 1880s, Native Indians that were still alive had been confined to reservations that were often in areas considered to be less desirable by the settlers. A true definition of the word gilded is used when describing an object covered in a thin layer of gold. But after Mark Twain used it in his novel, The Gilded Age, A Tale of Today, even textbooks started to use this term to describe this period in history. The gold-worthy things that occurred had simply been seen as just a thin layer that disguised the events that go beyond the mistreatment of the Native Americans. It was a period where greedy and corrupt industrialists, bankers, and politicians enjoyed extraordinary wealth and luxury at the expense of the working class. In many cases, the poor were unable to become even a part of the small group of middle-class citizens of the United States. To conclude, from the middle of the 19th century to the beginning of the 20th century, there are multiple changes within both the social and economic standards within America. Whether these changes were good or bad purely depends on who you are talking to, but one thing that can definitely be said about this era that it was indeed gilded. I hope that you learned something from this presentation and you leave with a little bit more knowledge than you came in with. And I also hope that we as citizens of the United States are able to preserve our history of our great nation. and study it so that future generations may look back and acknowledge some of our original settlers, as well as see what it cost to live here in the states we live in today.